Limited partners, historically the money behind the money, have always invested in venture capital funds. We then invest into startups, but the lines continue to blur as more and more LPs and VCs assume similar roles. What do you think VCs of the future will look like? Chris, start us off.
Sure. So, I play a lot of Xbox with my son and sometimes without my son. And so I've been attuned to this new phrase, like what we used to call noobs are today called bots. So if some players out there just kind of looking lost and whatever, and you can kind of take care of them, they're a bot. And, I was thinking about that. Most VCs today are bots, right? And, one of the things that, I always think about is the innovators are followed by the imitators who are followed by the idiots. And we've clearly reached the idiot phase in venture capital because there are just too many people starting too many funds and it's madness. So what does the future look like? I think there's going to be there's still the barriers to starting a fund are continuing to come down. So there are going to be a lot of people coming in and everybody's going to be fighting for, differentiation. But the word differentiation is a funny word because some things are differentiated in how much they suck. And that's something I think about all the time. But in terms of kind of practical, kind of what does the future look like? Look, back to this point about bots, right? I think the future is going to be very algorithmically driven. I think there are going to be a lot of people who, who are going to kind of throw up their hands, and we're starting to see some of it, already. And I think the use of data is going to become much more robust and rigorous going forward. But look, I'm on team human. I believe that drum machines have no soul. So I believe that live investors will continue to be important in kind of making decisions and pulling triggers. And so I love the style kind of pioneered by my friend Josh Koppelman. He and I used to sit at the Conshohocken Marriott in 2000.
Chris, you're going and going. I appreciate that, but I'm moving on. Hadley, take over.
Yeah, I mean, if you look back kind of at the history of venture, it tends to be pretty cyclical. I think to Chris's point, there's just too many venture funds, and we get more and more every day as that barrier to entry lowers. A lot of people are going to lose money in the next 10 years with a lot of those funds, and there's going to be a pullback, and we're going to see this kind of cyclical nature over time. If you look at the current progression, you have multi-stage funds getting bigger and bigger, and everyone says, well, are there just going to be 10 big multi-stage funds? It's tough for me to see a world where they're able to address the very early founders. How can they incentivize partners to work on those small rounds, those small investments, and get paid the same as the folks that are leading $100 million rounds? I just don't see that working out unless they're more junior people and they're not the type of folks that founders are going to work with. So I think there's always going to be an opportunity for smaller funds early on, even if there are kind of mega funds that handle most of the stack.
Elliott, your thoughts?
Yeah, what I love about going last in most of your questions is I'm actually going to try to answer your question. I think it was about the LP's role as a venture capitalist. Look, if you take a step back, the reality is most venture capitalists kind of suck at this venture capital thing, just by looking at the numbers. You can't really be upset with a bunch of LPs that are making bets, and there is some thought that, because they've invested in so many top tier GPs, or at least what they perceive to be top tier GPs, they have a unique view into different segments, trends, and the companies that are competing with each other. So if I think about SVB Capital or GIC, who I've done a lot of co-invest with from an LP perspective, I think it's great. And most of the big funds and GPs are also investing in smaller funds to see deal flow and trends too. So I think we're all just trying to figure it out. And as long as we keep trying to figure it out, fund cycle over fund cycle, it'll all work out.
Kate, you're actually going last here. You want to round it out?
Yeah, so I'm going to hit this in two ways and two things I'm excited about. One shift forward has been VCs starting to invest actually in emerging funds. I'm obviously biased, we're an emerging fund, but it's really interesting from a risk perspective, and then additionally from a really cool deal flow perspective. So being able to tap into a lot of emerging funds who have really good relationships with founders, and in many of them who have access to completely new pipelines, that's cool. And I think a smart move for many traditional VCs. The second thing in the reverse is new LPs coming in. We're talking to a small community bank out of Wisconsin. They're just getting excited about expanding their portfolio, trying to diversify them. They're really excited about getting a little closer to the deals and getting into the nitty gritty and actually being a little bit more of an active LP instead of just sitting back and kind of waiting for your quarterly statements. So I'm excited for some of the new highly engaged LPs coming in.
That's great. Any other?
I'd like to disagree with just part of what Kate said in terms of large funds investing in newer kind of early stage funds. I understand why it's a good thing for the larger fund. It's not always a good thing for the smaller kind of emerging fund. Especially if you're a seed fund, one of your main jobs is raising a Series A from the best fund possible for that team. And if you're captive to a Lightspeed or one of these funds that's doing a lot of investments in seed funds, you're going to be biased in that. And I really think it's important that you kind of put your entrepreneurs first and you connect them and get them to raise the best funds for them, not just for your relationship.
Yeah, fair. But part of that is the original relationship that you have set up, which is I'll reject an LP in a second if I don't think that they're going to be a good partner. So that's just sticking to your guns.
I hear you, but who's the best investor for each company differs, so it's tough to do that across the whole portfolio.
And then there's one of the challenges with VC innovation is that people are off doing all kinds of stuff without really thinking about it. And I'm not an accountant, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night, and the people talk about things like ECI. Like, I don't think half the venture investors who invest in smaller funds know what ECI is, but for some LPs, especially overseas LPs, it's actually kind of a big pain in the butt and creates all kinds of reporting requirements. So there's a lot of stuff that's like quote unquote being innovated where like we're just like kind of dropping a bunch of landmines for kind of future people to tread on.
Great stuff.